Hi, everybody. I'm Gabriele Ludwig with the Almond Board of California. As we wrap up this 2 days of virtual tour, we have gathered all of our grower hosts and to answer some final questions and hopefully get to some of the things that you've been asking over the last 2 days. Just a reminder, you still have the opportunity to add some questions to the Q&A tab. We'll try and get to them. No promises, but we'll try. For this closing panel, I'm joined by the growers, Matt Angell from the Pacific Farming Company, Christine Gemperle from Gemperle Orchards, Julia Violich from Cape Farms, and Ben King from Pacific Gold Agriculture. I'm also excited to welcome Ken Stenderup from Stenderup Act Partners. He is currently our chair of the board of the Almond Board of California. And Kent, why don't you say a few words about where you grow and what you do when you're not helping the Almond Board try and figure things out.
Thank you very much, Gabrielle. It's a pleasure to be here today and welcome everybody that want to be they're inquisitive about all things almonds. I'm a third generation family farmer down in Oregon, California. Oregon is the southern end of the valley, down in the bottom. The valley is 400 miles long, okay, which is not normal for a growing region. Usually growing region, this is the lengthwise. Oregon is on the bottom, and then you'd be up at Chico at the top. So as I mentioned, third generation, my grandfather came here from Denmark in the 1920s, and we've been here ever since. During that time, where my grandfather kept his mules, where the mule corral was, we now have a GPS where the corral used to be to guide our tractors. So that's the evolution in technology that we've adopted in just 3 generations. So I want to welcome everybody again. Let me mention, half of our ranch, our 2,000 acre farm, half of it's row crops, the other half vines. We have about 800 acres of almonds at this point in our business model. Thank you very much.
Ask each of you just to remind us where you grow and what size operation or what other crops you grow. So I'll start with Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Gemperle, and we have 2 orchards totaling 135 acres. We're almost in the geographic center of the valley, 200 miles south of Chico, 200 miles north of Arvin. And all the work is done by myself and my brother. So we're a little bit on the small side.
Just give a reminder of where you grow, what you grow, and how many acres. To Ben.
Hi, yes, thanks, Gabrielle. So we grow 350 acres of almonds. We're in Colusa County, which is in the north of Sacramento on the west side of the Sacramento Valley. So we're in between, say, Kent's Orchard and the San Joaquin Valley and Sacramento Valley is the Delta, and we're north of that, north of Sacramento. My family has been in farming business since 1860. My great-grandparents. We farm almonds on that ground that's been my family since that time. I also grow pecans, and I also work with farmers. We grow tomatoes and sunflowers.
And Julia.
I actually am a pretty large-scale almond and walnut grower. We have about 8,000 acres of almonds and about 4,000 acres of walnuts. We're also a walnut huller and have been hulling walnuts for 4 or 5 years. I'm located above Ben's family's ranch in Northern California as well. We're kind of centered around the Chico area, and we have ranches in both Glen, Butte, and now recently Tehama counties. We are not a long-time multi-generational family farm. We are, I would say, a 1.5 generation family farm. My dad bought his first acres in the 1980s, and I came on to work with him in 2000. So we're one of those unique farmers that now it's going to be a family tradition. My sons can't wait to work for the company, and I'm sure we will keep the farm in our family for years and years to come.
And Julie, if I recall correctly, you have siblings now have joined you in the operation, so it truly is becoming a family operation.
Yes, my dad works with me and helps with a lot of our equipment purchasing and facility management. And my sister just recently came on to help us with our sustainability program.
And Matt.
We're a small family farmer, third generation. They immigrated from Italy, and it started as in wine grapes, obviously. Then we moved into cotton and some alfalfa and crops. Currently, we farm 200 acres. Half of it is in almonds. The others in wine grapes. We grow Cabernet and French Colombard. But that's, and we're moving into looking at citrus, into a regenerative process or project where we'll grow the citrus on a completely different system. My training is in irrigation and water management. And so outside of the farm, I run a pump company and a well service company in Madera. We take care of a lot of the agricultural wells and municipality wells here in the county. What's interesting, we are absolutely in the center of the state of California. Madera is a county probably 10th or 11th largest in California, but there's only 3 towns. Half of our county is in the foothill and the mountains. We border Yosemite National Park to the east, and then the rest of the county is in the valley. Highly productive ground, amazing alluvial soils, and it's a great growing region. But for us, the biggest town that we've got is 75,000. So you wouldn't think in California a small county or a town that was in California that's only 75. So more than one person at a stop sign is considered a traffic jam here, and we absolutely love our county. It's a great place to grow.
And I actually say, Matt, that one thing that I've noticed is that it's not uncommon for growers, especially on the smaller side, to have another job on the side. So some kind of consulting services or custom harvesting services or irrigation management in your case. So I just want to say that is actually a very common situation like what you have. Changing gears a bit, given that we have another dry year, one of the key questions is really what's the impact of drier conditions on the crop, and how are you trying to manage with that? So Christine, would you like to try and take a first stab at that?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is we have to make a lot of choices in how to get through these times. And it's really important to note that the choices we make just don't impact this year's crop, but they can actually impact next year's crop. They can have an impact on what happens 5 years from now and 20 years from now. So we're always thinking these things out as we go forward, and the implications that they may have. Right now, we are in our operation, we're actually fallowing part of our land to give us a little more flexibility with our water. And then we're actually going to take out and redesign an orchard for ultimate efficiency for the next 25 years.
How drier conditions also impact the crop itself?
Yeah. So for way I look, I'm sorry, was that for me or Matt?
For you.
Yes, I didn't hear that part. Yeah. So we always anticipate variability in California. You don't know how much rain you're gonna get from year to year. So way we look at it is in wetter years, we actually use the surface water and let our aquifers recharge. And in drier years, we share the surface water and use our wells for our irrigation system. So we spent a lot of time planning. Both our surface water and our well water is all tied in the same irrigation system, and spent money and have filters on both into a drain waterway and our wells. So It's called conjunctive use and conjunctive capacity, but that's as being part of California, knowing that precipitation is going to change from year to year. That's how we've approached it.
And would Julia and Matt like to add anything to that question?
I mean, I would say we're doing the exact same thing. We're very conscious of water use, and we want to make sure that we'll be sustainable for years and years. We started doing soil mapping for our irrigation systems several years ago that enables us to not just irrigate by block, but do something similar to what Christine was talking about, where we're irrigating based on soil type, its ability to absorb the water, and for the trees to absorb, the water from the soil. So we've been doing a lot of those things. We're also have water catchment programs that we're working with, and are very concerned using soil moisture probes to make sure we don't overwater or underwater our trees.
I think California has been incredibly innovative of what they're doing. We see a lot of technology coming out of Australia. We're doing the same things that everybody's talking about: cover crops, healthy soils during the rain season, trying to get soil moisture back into the ground, checking the systems as far as Julie said with soil moisture, and then running a real fine line on just high resource management. I think that's going to be critical moving forward. So you hear the term precision application or precision irrigation all the time. I think we're going to get to a higher level. Currently, we've mapped all of our soils. We understand how to irrigate each block. And this year, we've just employed a technology that's allowed us to use different sensing devices that'll allow us to refine our evapotranspiration. That particular system will actually pick up the information coming off our soil probes, and obviously we're monitoring how much water we use. So that level of precision is what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, really what everybody's talking about is trying to figure out how to manage the water. And I think I just want to tie in to Christine's answer. In general, almond trees are actually quite drought tolerant. They just don't produce a lot under dry conditions. So just really want to be clear that the trees themselves can survive dry conditions. They're adapted for a Mediterranean climate. What we are assuming is that for this year, the crop has already been set before the trees knew it was going to be quote unquote dry. So for this year, we're assuming that the number of fruits will be the same. Sizing could be impacted by drier conditions. And as Christine was saying, with trees, you're really looking at things you do this year will have more of an impact on the following year's yield sometimes than this year. So the question really will be what will happen next year, depending on the level of how well the growers are able to manage the water that they do have. Kent, do you want to ask the next question?
Yes, thank you, Gabrielle. Good questions and great answers. I just want to remind the audience that it's been documented 93%. We were listening to these family farmers here, of which I'm one. 93% of the farms in California are family owned. So that's a statistic many people don't quite realize. We're going to talk. We had a question from Alicia Grabowski, and the way we're going to address it is, what do we do to educate others? We do this. Almond Board spends a lot of time educating its growers. Now, what do we do to educate others in the form of, our neighbors and the children? What are we doing? I'm going to ask Matt. He works with a program called RCD.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. We work with the youth on RCD. RCDs are throughout the nation. They're usually county-based. It stands for Resource Conservation. They're local governed entities, and the whole program behind it is to educate about knowledge and knowledge transfer. So how do you take technology and put it in the field? And one of our emphasis currently is in cover crops. In the San Joaquin region, we're trying to get 1 million acres of cover crops planted in the next 5 years, and I think we're well on our path. But with the next gen, what we're trying to do is bring kids in that are sit in an urban environment. In that urban environment, we're actually looking at lawns and landscapes and how do we convert them. Kids are highly interested in knowing what goes on. It's very relevant for them. So we've taken these kids. I also sit on the state FFA Foundation board. And recently, we're starting to look at the issues that we have in the Southern Sierra forest. So we've had tree mortality. We've had some sort of horrendous burns. And so the question becomes, how do we get back to reforestation? So in combination with like the FFA and Next Gen, we're trying to teach kids how to map these areas. So using GIS technologies, talking about resource management. But that's some of the things that we're trying to do. And the combination in the RCD between urban and rural, I think people are still looking at how they grow food. So it's been really good for us. And getting that information out, and these kids are really active in understanding it.
Thank you, Matt. Now, Christine, I'm going to ask you. Christine, whether you realize it or not, she's in high demand throughout the Central Valley. She has a college degree in biology, and she spends a lot of time educating all sorts of big cross section of different people throughout the valley. And the Almond Board is fortunate to have her on board. Christine?
Thanks, Kent. I started out actually doing 4-H, being a 4-H leader for when my kids were in 4-H and teaching kids how to do basic vegetable gardening, which was loads of fun. And these were kids, inner city kids on the west side of town. And a lot of them, you know, were from really impoverished families. And it was this great opportunity to show kids how to grow their own food and to bring it home. And even sometimes, you know, we were cooking it. And the kids even learned to can. It was pretty awesome. But I've also gone to career days at the local schools and talked in biology and FFA classes to the kids. I especially like to reach out to the young women and let them know it's everybody's world now. It's not just a man's world, and there is definitely a place for everyone there. It's very exciting. At the higher education level, I have now become involved with the UC Merced capstone ag engineering projects. I've mentored there, and I've also been a judge on those projects. And I just love to see the whole process from the kids, you know, when they're young all the way to when they're just beginning to go out into the world and start their careers and develop their ideas. So it's very gratifying to be a part of educating the youth and the future of our industry. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your dedication, Christine. And Ben, you want to share some thoughts on University of California funding and that type of thing?
Yeah. So first of all, as you probably want to thank the Almond Board for their support of research that's going on at UC Davis. UC Merced's great also, but the whole UC system. I've been fortunate to work with several different professors at UC Davis who have groups of graduate students and postdoctoral students working on issues that are important to the California almond industry. It's really great to work with because it's really moving the scientific process forward and helping growers in deciding which practices to adopt. But also a lot of these students come from other parts of the United States or other parts of the world and may not have a certain familiarity with California and its unique Mediterranean climate. And it's really great to talk to somebody who's knows a lot about and has a passion for soil health, and then talk about how we look at soil health and what we can do within our Mediterranean climate here. So I love engaging with the academic community and really finding common ground around sky.
Thank you, Ben. We're going to talk about technology. There's a U.S. University Department of Agriculture entity called Natural Resource Conservation Service. And that has helped many of us growers innovate and get on the leading edge of what technology is. It's all about conservation, smaller carbon footprint, being more efficient in natural resources. Our family, we consider an NRC as a partner because they funded a lot of big projects for us, whether it's in irrigation technology and efficiency, pest control using mating disruption, that type of thing, and also the pollinizer strips that we have on the farm as far as for bee health. So, and I'm going to ask Julia as far as their technology programs that they have in their family farm.
Thanks for the introduction. We basically have different pockets where we're applying different technologies to our farm operations, again, to do all the things that you were just saying, to be more efficient, obviously save money, to be more sustainable. The basic buckets are energy, water conservation / irrigation, tree health, which is very important, and of course, cost accounting, especially when prices are very low right now. In the energy arena, we have a lot of solar. In fact, we have close to 5 megawatts. One of our solar systems itself is an entire megawatt. We do some ROI accounting to make sure that it makes sense to us, but that's been a no-brainer. We also work with PG&E on several of their different programs, their auto demand response program and their peak day pricing program that we would only be able to participate in if we have this automated ability to shut on and off our pumps and monitor them. We also work really closely with in our water conservation, where we have, as we mentioned before, we have soil moisture probes. We have VFDs at all of our pumps. And we've created, actually internally, it's our own software. We've created our own software that's a dashboard for each one of our field managers that they can just hold in their hand when they're looking at their cell phone or their smartphone and see, what the temperature is, what the barometric temperature is, what the moisture of the soil is in the particular area. It's got a GPS, so it lands them right where they need to be. It gives them all the information that they need so they can make decisions right there in the field or at their computer. We also use technology for tree health. This is becoming, I think, very important because we have to cut cost on inputs since the prices are so low. But we want to make sure that our trees don't suffer as a result. So we're spending quite a bit of money in technology in that arena, doing aerial imaging, better soil mapping with ArcGIS. And then lastly, in the last 2 years, we've really focused on cost accounting and using technology to help us be more efficient with our everyday cultural practices. It's really hard to tell when you've got a huge operation to tell where one of your employees is, what piece of equipment they're on, and what their activity they're actually doing. So we've kind of had hypothetical discussions about how much we're spending on mowing versus pruning versus irrigation maintenance. But now with smartphones, I know where each employee is, each field manager is, what piece of equipment they're on, and what they're doing. So we're able to really look at our cost accounting, what's working in some fields and what's not working in others, and use best practices amongst us.
Julia and Ben, you'd already mentioned cover crops. You want to speak a little bit more about incentives for pollinators?
I'm sorry, the NRCS, or about that you broke up that last part.
The pollinator incentive program, yes.
Oh yeah, so thank you. Yeah. So one of the programs that we've been very active with, and because I have a real passion for bees. My brother was a beekeeper, and also really believe in soil health. Is that we have been part of the California Department of Food and Agriculture Healthy Soils Initiative, and we have actually worked with them and another group called APSM, which is promoting honeybee health, and planted we've planted over cover crops for over 5 years, but we just completed a 3-year program that was a part of an incentive program offered by the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And worked with APSM around cover crop selection. So these programs, the CDF 8% have just been instrumental for making it easy for us as a grower to plant our acreage in cover crops. And so this year we planted all 350 acres of almonds, and on some of the plantings that actually had a good stand even in a relatively dry year.
Very much, Ben. Christine, technology and sustainability, can they be symbiotic? That's a big word for me, but can we use one to get to the other? Can we?
Absolutely. In fact, right now we're seeing this huge convergence of technology with what's going on biologically in our trees. And it's not just that we're getting like, oh, you need to do this, but we're really getting deep into the answers of why. Why do we need to do this? You know, so we're looking at irrigating and using deficit irrigation now. And we know at certain times of the year that we can actually pull back on water, when in the past we would have never thought of pulling back on water in June. But here we can now, because we know that the trees don't actually need that much. And if we give them too much, we might contribute to some problems like whole rot. And so we're really getting deep into the whys. And you know, going forward, I think we're just going to be learning more. So yes, absolutely. Technology and sustainability are really like this.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, hey Ben, we're going to get away from the sexy stuff, away from the technology and the sustainability. We're going to talk about the business side of it. Okay, that's what we have to. At the end of the day, we got to face the business side of it. Tell us about that, as far as incentives and benefits and that type of thing on the business side. You're a good businessman.
Yeah. So, well, I think the first thing is that we wouldn't be in farming if we didn't take care of our soil. So we need to focus on soil health. And frankly, we look at cover crops as increasing our long-term sustainability as a farming operation. And so, you know, that's been one reason why we've actually adopted cover crops, and we look to continue to try to innovate with that. And the other relationship that I have is, frankly, is around our relationship with our beekeepers. You know, I think everybody knows that not all beehives or colony is a better pollinator. It's all about bee strength during times of pollination. So we focus on part of our business strategy is having a great relationship with our beekeeper and helping them having strong colonies, which not only helps us, helps the bees, and then really helps the industry. So, you know, as a core, as I think a farmer, we talk about stewardship, we talk about sustainability. That's not only good for us, but the communities that we live in, and our people who work with us on the farm, trying to produce food for the global world, for the global consumer. And so but the fundamentals of that is around soil health, and having, you know, good stewardship, good sustainability, and that gives us the ability to weather the cycles of weather and markets. So I think that's how we look at it.
Just wanted to address one of the questions that's come in during the session, which is to whom do you sell your almonds to? And I'm just going to take a first stab at that, is just to explain that there's around 7,400 almond growers or almond growers in the state, and there are about 100 handlers. The handlers are the ones that process the nuts so that they can be sold in the marketplace. So, and then in that process of handling, they get sorted by size and quality. The different varieties are kept different, or sometimes mixed, depending on that. So really what each grower needs to do is decide whom they want to work with as a handler, and then they sell their nuts to them, or the handler sells the nuts on their behalf into the marketplace. So as a consumer, you're not buying, in most cases, you're not eating a nut directly from an individual grower. It's coming from some mixture of growers that the handler processes. And of course, I've got construction going on somewhere in the building, not live at the same time, so I apologize. Wanted to just ask another question to Matt. As we've talked about in the orchard recycling, you know, at the end of an orchard's lifespan, this is something it can do. But one of the questions that comes up is, well, why what do trees die during the growth of an orchard, or why is it that we need to pull out an orchard after roughly 25 years? Can you give a little bit of an explanation of, you know, as the orchard grows and towards the last, I'll call it 10 years, what happens in an orchard?
Yeah, thanks. One of the things that we see, there's just a combination, and obviously we've all talked about soils today. Now, our soil variability from end to end of the valley is really diversified. There's ground that's 100-story index, which means really good soil, all the way down to lower quality soil. So when you start looking at that, I think that has a tremendous amount of impact on the survivability. I think how a grower, you know, the crops that came before, there may be some things that are left over. A lot of us were cotton farmers, so Vercillium wilt might be something that shows up. You know, low spots might have some type of, you know, some problematic areas. So I think as you look at your area and then you look at your crop, those things, they show up, and you're probably going to have a little bit of a loss due to that. You know, I would say, you know, in our orchard, we might lose maybe a tree per acre. And sometimes we can identify it. But Christina said something that was really important. As we use technology, we get to start asking questions that we've never got to know before. I mean, we start to have insights that really give us, you know, a good snapshot, like soil moisture. Is there too much? One of the things that I think that we look at and how we do lose trees, here in the central part, we get some tremendous May winds. So it's really important how we, you know, we're at that time we're irrigating and trying to get ready for the summer. So you get some wind blow, you know, how the trees were planted, rootstocks, all those things come up. So as we've all talked about, it's a very complicated science. You know, there's a lot of things. What type of rootstock, what type of tree, what type of soil, what's our water quality, all those things come into play. And I think to answer the question specifically, I think, you know, we have a certain amount of loss. Sometimes we know, but at the end of the day, we've got to get better at finding that out.
I'm just curious from the different growers, as you look at, I mean, Christine, you mentioned that one of the orchards you bought was really old. As you look at, and I remember talking to one grower, like he pulled out a younger orchard before an older orchard because the older orchard was still producing better than the younger one. So I'm just kind of curious, what are some of the triggers for pulling out an orchard, and what kind of ages do you see in some of the orchards you have?
Well, the biggest thing is production, because you want to be able to, you know, you want to, if your resources are going in to that orchard and you're not pulling that much out, you know, either there's something wrong, or you know, your trees are getting to that age, because there is a lifespan of those trees. We think of it as about 25 years old for most people. But actually, I had an orchard that was producing very well for a long time, and it was a mixed bag, but some of those trees were 60 years old. They were behemoths. So, you know, they had been well cared for, and so they had lasted a long time. But at some point, it just becomes a good idea, you know, when your efficiency is not there anymore, to pull them out and start over. And that's also a really great opportunity to put in new technology, so that as you go forward for the next 25 years, you at that moment have the best system that you can to produce the most with the least. So the least amount of water, the least amount of fertilizer, and hopefully the least amount of time. Because, you know, quality of life is really important too when it comes to being a farmer.
I want to be up at all hours of the day.
We are often, but you know, I'd like to have a little bit of time for myself once in a while, just a little.
Well, the other question, go ahead.
Yeah, so Gabrielle, I would say is that we actually one part of our orchard because we changed rootstock, and so we had a peach rootstock that wasn't doing well for we didn't really know, but we actually replaced it with some of the newer rootstocks that were developed, and so I just want to really just recognize the efforts of the USDA and all the researchers and our clonal germplasm sites for all kind of the biological technology or intellectual property that they have, that the industry working with the government, USDA are working to advance, because what the orchard is so much more resilient from wind or else than the orchard in the past, and the orchard of tomorrow will be that much more. And it's a never-ending process of a lot of smart and dedicated people trying to produce more with less, but also just produce a better tree.
Yeah, so the whole effort and focus on breeding both the signs and the rootstocks over the years. And that is truly a very, very long-term process. I want everybody to know that's not a 5-year, that's a 10, 20, 30-year process to come out with a new rootstock or variety. Just one other question. All of you have talked about choosing to apply either new technologies or new techniques in your orchard systems. And, you know, one of the questions that often comes up is, how do you decide which one of these new technologies to try? Do you do it wholesale? Do you do it in part of your orchard? And then the other question is, you know, how do you deal with, I mean, Julia, you mentioned, you know, figuring out the return on investment. How do you look at the upfront costs that are often associated with investing in something new with what you might or might not get in the future? So I'm just curious, as you think about some of the technologies you've talked about in your videos or in this answering, what was that calculus, if I could put it that way?
Well, to answer that question, there's a couple parts and pieces there. First of all, there are so many technologies. I mean, Ben was talking a little bit about bees. I mean, we have 12,000 bees, and I probably have been solicited by 10 different, you know, earth-shattering new bee technology that will make our bees much healthier and give us many more bee flight hours. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, salesmen coming out there telling you they've got the latest and greatest. A lot of time we obviously try the technology out, but a lot of time it's just like really trusting in the people, because at the end of the day, you need to have customer service. You need to have whoever you're going to use as your vendor really communicate with you, so you're able to use, you know, the technology to its best capacity. So that's really a good part of it. And, you know, trial and error, and of course, research. We do an ROI, or a return on investment analysis, for every single thing that we try out. It's an exercise that sometimes is futile and feckless, but it's often an exercise that really helps us better understand what we're trying to do as a farmer. Some of our return on investments are going to take 10, 15 years, but it's worth it because we're also going to be enhancing the health of our soil, for example. Some of them, like solar, total no-brainer, 2.5-year payback. And I've even got battery power or a battery storage system where I'm off the grid. So those are easy decisions. One of the things I want to talk about, though, that we haven't touched on with technology is adoption. You know, I came out fresh from business school, had all these great ideas, wanted to do this, that, and the other, and went to my farm managers who are multi-generational, and they just kind of crossed their hands and looked at me and shook their head. They were not going to do any of it. That's just one more thing that they're not used to doing. What are you talking about? My phone is for calling my wife. I'm not using that technology. So we do spend a lot of time, yes, looking at the numbers. Does it make sense? Is it good for our orchard? Is it good for our soil? Is it good for our trees? But also looking at kind of the human capital. Is it good for my employees? I mean, do they want to spend the extra whatever amount of time they have to do to help with cost accounting, monitoring, you know, aerial photography, looking at, photosynthesis charts that we're able to put on dashboards. If they're not going to adopt it, then there's no reason to invest in it. It's just not going to happen. So as a result, we spend a lot of our time when we're looking at technology, talking to our people, like, is this going to work for you? Is this going to create more hassle? Are the guys in the field going to just turn their heads and not use it? Like, we need to have buy-in at every single level of our farms and before we go forward with any of our technology.
Gabrielle, can I take a stab at that as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, I agree 100% with Julia. I mean, the adoption is critical. As Kent and I visited the other day, I've been in the software business for 25 years, and in the last 5, we've developed an on-farm SCADA that monitors and automates pump systems. So the bottom line is, I think that, as you look at it, the key is mapping, knowing your soils, knowing, what the index is, how strong that soil is. And I think those, is a good spot. But the thing that she said that was probably most important, we see a lot of Silicon guys come in to the farming arena. Most of our adoption has taken a lifetime. Hybrid corn seed wasn't adopted for 25 years, and they knew that it doubled the yields. So it's just a slow process. But what that all boils down to is trust. When you start trusting the end user, and I think in the last 10 years, we've developed processes, and I think how we look at things is it comes with a guarantee. If it doesn't work, we'll give your money back. And I think that's the thing that's important about farming, is that the people that you deal with, the families that you've been with, have been around you for literally generations, right? It's the one thing that my dad told me when I got into technology was, look, no matter what, I just don't want to show up at the hardware store and hear that, my kid did something that I don't want done. So I think it's really, really important that we build things that farmers, and you look at some of the best technology, some of the best harvesting equipment are built by farmers. Some of the best stuff that in the South Valley, all the tillage equipment are built by farmers. And I think software is no different. And our software is called Water Informatics. And at the end of the day, it's built by farmers for farmers. And I think that's critical, that you have a partner that's willing to spend 24/7 with you. And no matter what, I mean, ag is the most harsh environment for technology. I mean, and it makes it extremely difficult. So you've got to have a vendor that'll stand beside you. And then the adoption key is, there's just people that are going to use it, and then there's people that aren't. So
on that note, I just wanted to thank all of you, and on behalf of the 7,600 growers and the Almond Board of California, to all of the attendees for listening. And Kent, I hand it to you over to close out our virtual tour.
It's been great to hear and answer the type of topics that people hope this has been educational and enlightening experience. It's been a pleasure to bring our expertise to you over the last couple of days. To emphasize something our president and CEO, Richard Waycott, said at the start of this event, the California community is proud of the collective achievements you have heard about over the course of this tour. But as you also seen, hard at work and continuing to drive incremental on-farm improvements. You also saw one of our biggest cheerleaders, Secretary of Agriculture, Karen Ross. She is one of our biggest cheerleaders, by the way. By 47 years of Almond Board Fund research and nearly 700 projects to uncover the impacts of almonds on nutrition and optimize our farming practices and sustainability, we look forward to sharing more updates on responsible growing and nutritional aspects that help almonds as a plant-based food. If any new questions come to mind, we're always happy to provide more information on your knowledge of almonds. You can visit almonds.com to browse our extensive library of sustainability and nutrition resources, as well as view guidance on how almonds are best used in recipes and food products. Over the last 2 days, I'd like to thank all of you for taking time to learn about California almonds and the efforts of our growers and handlers. Thank you.